Hey, friend, welcome back to another episode of the Joy at Home podcast. I am super excited about today's conversation because I feel like it's a topic that is relatable and necessary in all of our lives. We're going to be talking about how to have a hard conversation today. And especially if you're non-confrontational, when that can feel awkward sometimes, but that conflict needs to be resolved. Sometimes we need to press through and have those hard conversations anyway. And so today's guest, Lyncon Martinez, is the host of Gather the Gals, an online Christian women's ministry and podcast. She's also a registered nurse, a mom of three, and married to her high school sweetheart. With all of those
Yes.
awesome things that she has going on, I can only imagine that Lyncon has had to navigate some really hard conversations over the years, which she's going to share with us about. And I can't wait to hear the wisdom that she has to share today and all the things that she's going to share with us to help you and I to have those hard conversations too. Welcome to the podcast, Lyncon.
Oh my goodness. It's so good to be here. I've loved just listening to your podcast and all the insight that you have. And so I'm just excited to be able to speak on this topic a little bit.
That is so sweet. It is truly an honor and a joy to have you here today. And I feel like you're living this beautiful life that is very relatable to so many of us. You're a mom and a wife, and you've got all these amazing things going on. And so truly, I can only
Yeah.
imagine that you have had to have some of these hard conversations as you've got in-laws and you've got kids and you've got a spouse.
Yes.
So let's dive right in today, Lyncon. Let's just jump right into the heart of some of those hard conversations that you have had to have over the years. Would you just share a little bit of insight with that about that with us?
Absolutely. And you're so right. I'm like being a nurse and a mom of three, and like you have hard conversations and I'm a pediatric nurse. So you have hard conversations with families that are, heartbreaking conversations. With the whole COVID pandemic, we were having hard conversations with that. Like if you're going to get the vaccine and all this and you're going to lose your job, and it's like you have so many hard conversations in your life, and I'm like it's needed to figure out how to navigate that. And so when we were talking about this topic, I was like, man, like this is just it's been on my heart because like you have hard conversations as a wife with your husband, you have them with your best friends. I'm like, nobody goes through seasons just happy and joyful and all the time, right? Like you're going to go into these hard conversations. But one that really just stuck to like really just came to my heart, it was my father-in-law. And I'm like, I was talking to my husband. I'm like, okay, which hard conversation should I talk to them about? Because I'm like, I've had them with my parents, with, just multiple people. But as being married to my high school sweetheart, like I said, we've been together since we were 14. And we now have three beautiful kids, two boys and a little girl. And this is probably one of the hardest conversations that we've had to have. And so, just a little backstory. Like I said, we grew up high school sweethearts. His dad and his mom is a precious, sweet lady. And so everybody got along with his mom. His dad was almost like the narcissistic personality. And so he liked to have the attention on him. He was way back when a heavy alcoholic, very colorful language, all the things. And so we just didn't ever connect the way you wanted to with your in-laws, if that makes sense. And so I grew up in a Christian family, and all that basically. And so my father-in-law, whenever my husband was like growing up, he was big into sports, and my husband always felt like he had to perform. And so he loved football. He was great at it at high school, went on to play in college, all the things. But it was almost like if he didn't perform, he was getting emotionally abused, he was getting somewhat physically abused and things like that. And so growing up with this, I knew that about him. But whenever he was around me, he would like put up almost like a front. And so as a Christian, I would, lovingly accept him and welcome him and all the things and be, as good of a Christian person as I could be, right? But whenever we started talking about engagement and things, I had that hard conversation with myself of, okay, this man's going to be my father-in-law. And it was almost to the point where we did not get married. And even my parents sat down and talked to me like, this is something that, he's going to be your father-in-law. And it wasn't that we had an awful relationship, but even speaking to my husband, he would be like, he's not the dad that you want as your dad, right? And so, and they're all like, so my husband's got a brother, a sister, and they all feel that way. And so they would distance themselves. I remember one time we were at just like a friend's house. We were actually in college at the time, and there was some underage kids, and like in high school. And so like I said, he was an alcoholic, and he gave one a beer, and I was like, whoa, let's not, not do that. And he kind of got in my face, and my husband stepped in between and was like, let's just go, like this is literally just like a graduation party for one of our friends. And at that time, we would start receiving ugly texts. We would, it was just very emotionally abusive for my husband, and never that father figure. My husband has always said he had to be that father figure for his brother and for his sister. And
Wow.
even my mother-in-law, she would always say he held the household together, and that's a lot of weight for the oldest son.
Yeah.
And so kind of fast forward, we would still get these like ugly text messages. We're married now. And we would always be worried. What is he going to do? What is he going to say? Like, you never know what he was going to do or say in public at our wedding. We were kind of nervous about that. So we were just like, okay, we're going to have kids. And we had to come to a point where I had to have hard conversations with my husband. And I'm like, I don't want this type of personality, things like that around my kids. Like, I want my kids to obviously be raised in a loving Christian home. And he was manipulative, where he would like speak things to them or to other people and things like that. And so me and my husband had to have hard conversations. And it was to the point where I was like, if you don't have these hard conversations, it eats you alive. And
Mm-hmm.
this bitterness just resides in your heart, and it just makes you the person that you don't want to be. And it may not even be hurting the other person, but you're holding on to this, and your heart just begins to harden against this person. And that's not Christian, and that's not loving, right? And so I'm like, okay, Landry, like, we're two Christian, loving people. We love your dad, obviously, right? Like, I wouldn't be feeling this way if I didn't want to preserve this relationship with him. And so I kept feeling like, okay, we need to have this talk. And so we went to his brother and his sister, and we were like, we all got to have a talk, because we're at the point in life where it's our life now. We're married. We're going to start having kids. No longer does he have, say in the kids' lives to an extent, right? And so we did. We finally had that hard conversation. And mind you, he's never said sorry. He's never apologized for the way he has been to the kids and things like that. So we prayed a lot about it, and we finally were like, because my husband's non-confrontational at all. I'm more the one that I'm like, all right, let's just have the talk. Let's, get to it. And my husband's like, I don't want to really I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And I'm like, I am turning into a different person towards this man. I'm like, it hurt my heart for the way I felt towards him. I didn't want that. I wanted a father-in-law who I was okay with being around my kids. And so I knew I needed to fix it on my end to have like a clear conscience and to be okay with, the Lord's calling me to speak life into this man, right? And so I'm like, all right, let's have the conversation. So he came over, and I tell you what, he normally is like finger yelling, all the things. He sat, he wept, he said sorry. It was like the most beautiful experience that like we were in awe. Like, there was no yelling. He let my husband open up. My husband cried tears that it was like there was just so much that needed to be said over a lifetime. And like I said, I've been with him since 14, so I'd seen so much of this growing up with him. There was times where he would stay like at our house in my brother's room because his dad kicked him out of the house. Like, it was just, and it was for no reason. It was like, why are you spending time with her and her family more than me? It was just that narcissistic, manipulative thing. And my husband even he's like, because this is the family that I want, Dad. Like, I want to be in a Christian home, and like, like things like that. And so it was so needed, like absolutely needed, because I truly believe a few months prior to that, he started making changes. He quit drinking. He was getting into the word. And it's like, I really believe that the prayer that we prayed for so long for this, for my father-in-law, finally, like, God just like interceded and planted that seed into his heart. And when it was that time to have this conversation, um, he like melted and he was like, I'm sorry. And my husband said, you don't understand, like over and over, it's like you're chopping down at a tree. Everything you've done to me over the course of my life in our marriage, like he's like, you've hurt our marriage. And like now we're, we had our, I think we had maybe, I know we had our first son and I believe maybe the second son, or maybe I was pregnant with my second when we finally had the conversation. And he's like, I don't want this. I don't want your attitude how you are now in my kids' life. I want you to be, different to them. And he did. He loved them in a way that my husband said he's never loved him. He loved his grandkids in a different way. Which praise Jesus. But it was just a very hard conversation. But all this to be said, I truly believe the Lord worked in a crazy beautiful way, because we had that conversation and then my sister-in-law and brother-in-law also had a conversation and they got everything off their chest. And like I said, he's never been one to say I'm sorry, and he wept and he said I'm sorry, and he asked for forgiveness. And then a few months later he passed. And he passed away whenever it was all the COVID stuff. And it was like, it was almost a breath of fresh air, because that conversation needed to be had. And it, for so long, their whole family had put it off. And it's like they were just so thankful that the Lord, spoke to us and said, it's time. Like, and it's the clarity that we had. It was like, it is time to have this conversation. And we knew it. We had such a peace about it, you know? And I was reading, it's so funny. I was reading in Psalms really last night, and it was like crazy because we're having this conversation, and I don't know why I don't know why, but I opened Psalms, which I'm not even reading Psalms right now. And it says in Psalms 32, it says, for when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night, your hand was heavy upon me and my strength was dried up. And then it says, I acknowledged my sin to you and I did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. And then later on, it says, you are my hiding place and you preserve me. I will instruct you and I will teach you and I will show you the way you should go. And I wrote down, because I keep a Bible for my daughter. She's 8 months, and I journal in it every morning. And so one day it's like going to be my gift to her. And I want her to be able to look back and see what mama was writing her for, things that she goes through in life. And I just wrote, I said, think of verse 3 as like saying, this is eating me alive. And so I'm just like, it's so true. It's like, if you hold these grudges in, it eats you alive. And that is just, it's not what God wants. Like, because, it's like, it says in the Bible that, you can speak words of life or you can speak words of death. And so as a Christian, it's like, why would I try to hurt this person? Even though he's hurt me, why would I try to hurt him? Why would I speak harshly to him? And so I just feel like going into these conversations full of like, okay, God's given me all the grace. And like, there was times where we were like, he will never see our kids, but I'm like, man, to take that away from him is like, and it's like, why did I care, but to take that away from him, to like, you'll never see my kids, your grandkids. And I'm like, thinking back, I'm like, wow, if I would have done that, he would have left this earth with never that joy of that grandkid, And so I just try to think that I'm like, God, the word of God it's living, it's breathing, and it's, it can pierce the hardest heart. And so we just tried to live as an example. And we went into that conversation of like, God's instructing us, like we've prayed about it. And I tell you, we prayed for months. There was so many times where it was like, we, not necessarily chickened out, but it was like not happening. Or like, he was supposed to come over and something happened. Or like, it was just the way it happened was just the right time. And so, yeah, that's probably one of the toughest conversations that that I've had.
Wow, Lincoln, oh my gosh, there was so much there. First of all, you are a beautiful soul and you're a beautiful example of a godly Christian woman. And the way that you sought out wisdom and the way that you dug into and the way that you do dig into scripture and what you shared in Psalm, there was
Yeah.
so beautiful and so timely. Everything you shared
Yeah.
reminded me that God is just ever faithful and ever present, and
Yeah.
he works things for the good of those who love him in his time. And
Yeah.
his timing is always spot on and it's always perfect. And we can always trust that he's always working
Yes.
behind the scenes and that he hears our
Yeah.
prayers. You spoke to the power
Yeah.
of prayer and how
Yes.
God's word and God penetrated hearts as a direct result of the prayers that you were praying, and he hears us and he sees us and he calls us by name, and he's got it all behind the scene. But it is so important for
Yes.
us to come to him, to open our Bible, to
Yeah.
have those truths tucked in our heart, and to gain the strength and wisdom and courage that we need from him to have those hard conversations. And
Yeah.
you reminded me, Lincoln, that sometimes the hurt produces bitterness because it's like, the hard conversations that need to happen when we don't go ahead and have those, it's like a wound on our heart
Yeah.
and we run from it and we avoid it and we put a band-aid over it and it's still there. And we
Yes.
put another band-aid over it and we run and hide again and avoid the conversation again and put another band-aid over it. And that
Yeah.
wound, it's getting deeper and bigger and it's festering. And so sometimes it's like we need to peel off the band-aids and actually deal with the wound
Yeah.
itself so that it doesn't fester, that we're not harboring that bitterness. I
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, undoubtedly the Lord brought us together, Lincoln, and brought you to have this conversation with me today because you just brought all these things to light, some of which I hadn't even thought about. Especially how the bitterness can just sit there and harbor in our heart and continue to grow and
Yes.
continue to grow, and to approach all of this from a biblical view with biblical grace and wisdom and
Yes.
honor and with prayer. I want to talk a little bit about that non-confrontational personality type. And I love that in your guys' marriage,
Yes.
one of you kind of is, and one of you isn't. It's like
Yeah.
you've got kind of the best of both worlds going on. So
Yes.
how would you encourage someone who is more of a non-confrontational personality, which if you're a non-confrontational personality and you weren't just convinced right now by what Lincoln shared that maybe it's
Yeah.
time to have some of those hard conversations, like I don't know what will convince you, but anyway, Lincoln,
Yes.
say you're speaking to a non-confrontational woman who has a hard conversation that needs to happen, but she's scared, she wants to
Yeah.
avoid it. What in the world, what encouragement would you speak into her heart to go ahead and initiate that hard conversation?
Yeah, yeah. I think, it's such a good question because like I said, like my husband is more that person and it hurt our marriage. Like we for the longest time we would avoid it like we were talking about and we would put it off, but it's something that would just keep on coming back. And my husband even used this like analogy of like think of like you have a tree and you continue to just axe at that tree and you're taking chunks out and finally that tree is just going to fall over. And I'm like, it's so true. It's like you said with the band-aids, like you keep on just bandaging. And it's like these emotions that you're feeling to whoever it is that you're needing to have that conversation to, if you don't just acknowledge it, that wound is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt the other person. They may have no idea what's even on your mind. And so what I try to do, especially now, like, and I'm trying to grow in this too, but if I have a something that I need to go to, and I'm not wanting to talk about it, I try to do it in the way that, and this would help the non-confrontational part. I try to own my part. So go about it and, hey, I need to talk to you about something that my heart is hurting over. But before I do that, I want to say I'm sorry. And like almost like come about it in a different way of like, hey, I'm owning it. Even if it's 1%, 2%. And that may just be like, I have dwelled on this for a day and I should have came to you sooner. I've dwelled on it for a month and I should have came to you sooner. And I'm sorry. I've given you the silent treatment and I'm sorry. Because I feel like if you're owning your part and you are being vulnerable to them, then they're going to want to open up and be vulnerable to you. And I feel like if you're not just going in almost like pointing fingers or saying like, you hurt me, and you're kind of like focusing it back on you and saying like, I have a part in this too, then I feel like that can kind of open the floor. And the biggest thing that I do before any hard conversation, is I really do. I try to talk to the Lord to say and just pray about it, because He promises that He goes before us and He's going to lead us and guide us, especially in these hard conversations. Like emotions are real, and it's really hard to get fumbled with your words when you are talking, and you may be upset, or if you're an emotional person. I get emotional when I'm like having a conversation and you don't remember everything, right? And so jot stuff down, or pick up the phone and say like, hey, like, let's meet for coffee, if it's your best friend that maybe hurt your feelings or whatever it is, and just say like, I really need to talk to you about something, and I want to do this because I love you. And because the thing is if you didn't love that person and want to preserve that relationship, these thoughts wouldn't be continuously coming to your brain and to your heart. Like, you are thinking this for a reason, and for a reason God wants you to preserve this relationship. So I feel like that's probably the way that I would go about it, is kind of owning your part, and making sure that they know, oh, this is a two-way street. Like, let's bandage this relationship.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I think personal responsibility, like write that word down and post it up on your bathroom
Yeah.
mirror. It's so applicable for so many things in this life. And so many
Yeah.
people don't want to take it, don't want to deal with it,
I know.
don't want to own their part. But just like Lincoln shared, you could just see the other person. I mean, you could see and feel and hear their heart softening and walls coming down. It makes me feel,
Yeah.
or it makes me think of the word repentance in the Bible. The Lord asks us to bring our stuff to Him, to take personal
Yeah.
responsibility. Hey, this is my stuff. I take responsibility for it. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. Please forgive me. And He does, just like that. And I think that
Yeah.
that's applicable in our relationships too. And I think that's fantastic advice, Lincoln, to come to the other
Yeah.
person with everything Lincoln's already shared so far, knowing that it's going to bring healing, knowing that walls are going to come down, knowing that it's going to help both people or all the people involved to move forward, owning your stuff, saying, hey, I'm not coming at this from a place of condemnation, but rather from a place of love. And I love how Lincoln used the words to preserve the relationship, because you truly care about the other person,
Right.
right? Whether it's your in-laws or your
Yes.
spouse or a close friend or
Yeah.
your own kids or, your own parents, it's about coming at it from a place of love and working through the problems so that you can preserve the relationship. I
Yeah.
want to talk
Mhm.
a little bit about boundaries, Lincoln. That word, I feel like people throw that word around and it means different things to different people. And I know you mentioned at the start of our conversation there, you were talking about, like, is this going to come to a place where we're going to have to keep our kids away from my father-in-law? Is that a boundary we're going to have to draw? Because there is kind of a fine line between protecting, especially as parents, protecting our
Yeah.
children. And you and I both know that we become like who we hang around, that we're heavily influenced by people that are
Yes.
speaking into our life, because those words do hold power. So just give me your thoughts on setting loving yet firm boundaries when we need to, and how that kind of correlates to this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the boundaries that we kind of put into place is for a while he would, before all this happened, he would try to come over when I wasn't home. And so it was like when I would be at work, he would say, hey, I want to stop by. And I would always be like, why is it that you don't want to come when it's us as a family? And it was just my oldest. He was probably like 18 months at the time. And so then my husband's like, there's no reason that you need to come, like, come when she's here. We're a family now, and we all are trying to build this marriage, this relationship. And so that was a boundary that we put into place, is like, okay, if you want to stop by, give us a heads up. Because there was times where he would just stop by, and it was like, we both, like, I'm a nurse, my husband's in law enforcement, so we were like shift schedules, all that. And too, you're growing in your marriage, and you don't have a lot of time when you're working, full-time jobs and stuff. And so that was a big boundaries we put into place, is just, give us a heads up when you're coming, come when we're all home. And two, I feel like if just put those boundaries in a place where you respect each other, because that's like the whole thing. It's like you want to be able to enjoy this other person's presence or whatever it is. And if they can't, agree with you, like if you come to them and put these boundaries into place and they're not agreeing with you, to me, I feel like, okay, you've done your job, you've done your part, and the rest is on them. And like I said, go about it in a graceful, loving way, because, like I was talking about, how you speak to them is going to, either bring them to Jesus or bring them not to Jesus, right? Like those seeds that you are speaking of love, God can do so much with that. And so that's what we would do, is like we would set these boundaries into place, and what he did with them was on him. Like we did our part. And if you wanted to see your grandkids, then you would like abide by these rules, because now we are one, we are, married, and this is our house. And he respected them, thank goodness. And so I feel like if you, just make sure that you have these open conversations, because that's like the best thing you can do, is to not avoid them and to not do silent treatments, because nobody's going to know what you're truly feeling unless you let them know. And I've, even in marriage, like I've had to do that with my husband. It's like when I'm putting my newborn down and I walk out and my boys are still sitting on the couch, and I'm like, I get so like mad, and he's like, whoa, what happened? And I'm like, I'm like, oh, they should have been in bed. He's like, I didn't know. Or, and I'm like, okay, if I let you know what I expect or how to help me, if I'm doing the dishes and he's cooking dinner, then it's like, okay, we're on the same page. Like if I communicate to you what I need and you reciprocate that, then we're both on the same page. But if it's like you're given the silent treatment, you're not, you're mad, you're avoiding it, you're stuffing it down, you're not putting those boundaries into place because you're not communicating well, then that's just kind of bad for everybody, right? And so I feel like just being open and being honest and being just truthful and say like, hey, like this is what we expect. And if you follow it, great. And if not, then can't see your grandkids, right?
Yeah, I think good
Yeah.
communication is key. I think that's hugely important, is communicating our expectations and our needs and our boundaries.
Yes.
And I also just, again, I really appreciate just the example of Christian wisdom that you and your family are. The way that your husband steps up to protect you is such a beautiful
Yeah.
example of a biblical marriage. And the way that you mentioned how you guys had become one now, right? That's
Yeah.
scriptural. When marriage happens, the husband
Yes.
and wife are then one, and they separate from, in a sense, from the other
Yeah.
parts of the family. And so just to have kind of that like
Yeah.
beautiful veil or umbrella over you guys, and see you walking that out is so beautiful, and it works so well. We follow God's plan for our
Yes.
life and our
Yes.
family. It works
Yeah.
much better when we live the way that he has called us to live. So I think that's fantastic. As we come to a close today, Lyncon, I want to shift gears just a little bit. And I thank you so much for all that you've shared thus far. I want to give you a quick chance to talk about Gather the Gals ministry and podcast, and just share what that's all about, and let listeners know where they can connect with you or find you.
Yeah, yeah. So I started Gather the Gals in last year of 2023. And honestly, like I have journals back 10 years ago when I was in high school that the Lord had put on my heart, something in women's ministry. I have such a joy and passion for women and just loving on women in that community. And growing up, I needed that. And, I had a good relationship with my parents, but it wasn't that they were my parents. They were strict. It wasn't, they knew like we weren't friends, like I'm your parent, right? And I'm like, I had friends, but I wanted that godly wisdom, counsel, friend who you can go to with anything, you can be vulnerable with. And I didn't have it. And so going through nursing school, going through postpartum, all these seasons, I was like craving it. And I mean, I was praying hard for it. And I had some pretty rough postpartum seasons. And so I remember with my second one, it was like 3 a.m. He was colicky, would not sleep at all. He had eczema, food allergies, all the things. And I just remember at 3 a.m., I was sitting there, and my husband has a picture, and my head's just in the air. And I just remember saying, God, like, if there was just one person that I could just talk to right now, just to say, like, okay, you're not alone. It's 3 a.m., and you feel so alone, right? And I just needed that. And I heard him say, then start it. Like, start that community that you're craving. And I mean, it's just been so cool to see the Lord put it into place. Like, from the moment that I knew I was having a daughter, I knew, okay, I've got to start this community, because she needs it. I want that for her. And I want her to grow up with these women who are on fire for Jesus and who want to grow in their walk. And so, honestly, like I said, I'm a nurse. I had no idea what I was doing, but the Lord, we started it. I went to one of my best friends and we were like, she's like, okay, I'll help you with whatever I can. And so we tried to record some stuff together, and then her job got busy. And so I was like, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And I mean, I just get the sweetest emails and texts. Like every time I'm like wanting to throw in the towel, and I'm like, no, like this is something that the Lord has in store. And like my community around here, we have women who are just craving it. And we do moms night outs, we do Bible studies, we do meetups, we're going to host like a worship speaking event soon. Like it's just been such a joy that I get to dig into the word and learn more and know more, and then just get to share it. I just feel like we have lost that vulnerability with connecting with others. And that's what I want women to know is like, you are not alone in the seasons. And like we connect in those areas. When you are open with that 2% that you don't tell people, you will make friendships that will last a lifetime. And that's what I just want people to know is like, no matter what you're going through, like you're just so loved. And so that's the whole behind the scenes of Gather in a little summary.
That is so exciting. And I tell you what, I absolutely relate to that. God will send you those little love notes when you need him, and he'll send you
Oh,
that little push to keep going. Like you can't throw in the towel
yes.
on me. You're doing
Oh,
kingdom work. And he's just,
yes.
he's so faithful to affirm and
Yeah.
confirm and keep us moving forward. So Gather the Gals, is it more an online thing or is it more a physical meetup thing?
Well, so it's been so all of 2023 is really was more online because I had my little girl May 30th last year. And so now we've moved it and we do mom's night outs, we do play dates, we do all these different things. And so it's starting to kind of branch out there. What we're hoping to do is almost have like people can just like host their own little meetups. I've published a little prayer devotional that people have that just goes over topics like, anxiety, motherhood, self-love, contentment, just stuff to kind of connect you into the Bible of like okay, I'm dealing with, anxiety right now. Where do I go? And it just kind of teaches you how to do that. So yeah, I just kind of create content and just kind of get it out there, like mom's night out guides, marriage guides, just different things like that. But yeah, that's kind of what it is all right now.
That is so exciting. Where can listeners find more information about Gather the Gals ministry?
Yeah, so our podcast and social media it's Gather the Gals, mainly on Instagram. TikTok, was not a TikTok person, but one of my friends told me to get on it, and so I'm on TikTok. One video went viral and I was like, it was all about teaching my kids about God. We did like that whole orange peel where one sinks and one floats,
That's
and it
awesome.
took off. So I was like, okay, we're on TikTok now, I guess.
Hey, we got to bring
But
some light
yeah,
to that platform as well, right? It's needed everywhere.
I know, exactly. That's why I was never on it. My husband's like, don't do it. He's in law enforcement and he knows all the, and I was like, nah. And then he goes, well, I guess the Lord needs you on TikTok, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yes.
So
Yes.
needed, so needed. Well, Lyncon, you truly
Oh,
are a light. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for everything that you shared. I just absolutely appreciate your
yes.
heart and your wisdom. So thank you for being here today.
Yes. Thank you so much, Katie.
All right, friends. With that, make sure you go and check out Lyncon Martinez. Go check out Gather the Gals ministry and podcast, and be sure and share this episode with a friend because I'm telling you, this hard conversation thing, it's relatable. It's something that everyone is going to deal with at some point. And as we talked about today, it is so important to move forward and to go ahead and have the courage to have those hard conversations for the healing of your own heart. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. We're signing off with joy.